Now this next scene, it on its head, you may not think about it, but this kind of shows the end of the spectrum. You have a battle-hardened Marine and how he treats a living creature versus someone who just arrived on the island who is still naive and thinks of war through the eyes of the books he read on the Civil War growing up as a kid. And so we're going to cut to E.B. Sledge and Sid Phillips sitting on the island because once again, this is like 2 days before Sid leaves and heads back home.
Give some of those out of you hooch, you won't feel so tender-hearted.
Are those most butt-ugly creatures you ever saw before in your life?
Give him a camel. And so Sid's going to do what someone who's been fighting these damn god-awful creatures in his word might do, and that's to take a Zippo to it.
All right.
Jesus, Sid. You start pulling them out of your hooch in the morning, you won't feel so tender-hearted.
And as your dad pointed out, inside the Boondockers, you'd find them in your shoes.
Yeah.
Some of the guys think they're good luck. You can have this one. I got a couple.
I don't know if you can see this, but I actually have one on my uniform that I put here in the buttonhole, so I didn't have to cut a hole in my lapel.
Okay.
But I've never seen or heard reference of that until your father mentioned it in a book, and obviously the scene in the Pacific where you see your father having one. You just did it. Could you get up for the sake of the audience, go over and look at your father's P-41 and see if there's a hole on the lapel from where he had one pushed in there?
You want the camera over there? Or?
No, you can just lean into it and just tell me if you see a hole in the lapel on that uniform.
I don't think... I really don't. And the top button is buttoned when they sewed this into... But like on the collar, it may be on the lapel. I don't see one on the collar. I do remember my dad talking about how they fastened one on the left collar for luck.
Yeah, see, I didn't. I probably should at this point because this thing's so many years old. But this is an original era EGA. It does have the screw-on back, and I think I will poke a hole in my collar at this point. It don't really matter. But when I first got my uniform, I just put it in the buttonhole, so I didn't have to cut a hole. But I will put it on the collar. But yeah, that's just another one of those little specific little detail that your father mentioned in the book haphazardly.
Yeah.
And then we have this scene, and then as throughout the series, it's on his lapel.
Right, it's on his, like, sure. Sid has it on his collar, but you see Sledge has it on his lapel. So, yeah, I mean, that dungaree jacket does not have a hole in it. His other dungaree jacket, which I donated to the Museum of the Pacific War, the Nimitz Museum in Texas, was even newer condition than that. And that my mother and I had some conversations about this, and I to this day am confused and don't know what happened. But I retrieved that from the archives at Auburn when my dad sent all his stuff down there, and they gladly let me have it because they were really set up for flat documents, not artifacts. But
sure.
My dad had a piece of paper. I don't think it's still there. He had written on a large Post-it note in his own handwriting, dungaree jacket worn by E.B. Sledge through combat at Peleliu. I remember, I mean, that was his and he wore it, okay, without question. But I remember as a kid, and my mother remembers this, in his closet, in his study, there was the dungaree jacket he wore at Peleliu. And it was faded, bleached. It was salty, stained, still salty with sweat stains. Now, it had been washed.
Yeah.
But that thing was hanging, and I remember him showing that to me, and I just remember being, as a kid, and being captivated at, shit, man, my dad wore this in combat.
That's kind of sad that it's missing.
Well, I don't, my mother, and you know, I cleaned out, I helped my mom clean her house out when she moved in 2017. And of course, she's passed away, but I don't remember what happened to it. But
maybe he gave it away.
Right there, that was Eugene Sledge's beyond doubt. He wore it.
Yeah.
I just don't know when he wore it. I mean, that other one, beyond question, was sweat stained and faded and had seen heavy action. And I don't know what happened to it. And my mom doesn't remember what happened to it. Now, like I said, that was Eugene Sledge's dungaree jacket right there.
Yeah, but we just had a whole conversation about how people love salty uniforms, and that sounded like it was the saltiest of uniforms that went missing.
And I will tell you, I've seen dungaree jackets in the Museum of the Pacific War that are, worn by Private so-and-so from wherever, at Eniwetok or Kwajalein, and they look even newer and cleaner than that.
Yeah.
That's got stains on it and the shoulders are torn out of it. So without question, Sledgehammer wore that. But that other one, I will never know what happened to that.
Now, this is a very good scene. This is another scene that kind of shows your father and his doughy-eyed, bushy-tailed rabbit. The beautiful long shot. This is such a well-done scene.
Well, they really, when I first saw this, Don, I was like, man, I wish they would have portrayed Sledge as being a little rougher, because I do think he was.
Sure.
But then the more, and I would say this, and if we can tap into that Netflix market, man, we got to let people know, keep watching this because it gets better every time you watch it. There's so much there that you will discover. And read China Marine, read With the Old Breed, read Helmet for My Pillow, hell, read Devil Dogs by Saul David.
Read You'll Be Sorry by Sid Phillips.
Yeah, read You'll Be Sorry by Sid Phillips. There's so much meat on the bone there to really dive in and explore. But the Pacific, the more you watch it, there's something there. Leighton and I've had this conversation. Every time I watch it, I discover something I didn't see before. But you see the development of, Joe Mazzello did such a great job in that character arc of, as you put, doughy-eyed, and that's what he was. He's showing that. But man, and we'll get, when they're on Okinawa pushing on past Shuri Ridge, Sledge is about as battle-hardened as anybody could be.
And a whole new group of doughy-eyed troops come in, and you kind of see his previous behavior in those new people. And that's kind of got to be hard for family members such as yourself. As you said, I wish they would have portrayed my father in a little more hardened way. But then you realize, we're telling a story here. And one of the key factors of this story is how combat changes somebody.
Yes.
So he may have went to Pavuvu at a level 4 or 5 on a hardened scale, but we're going to notch it back to a 2 so that when he hits the 10, it's more noticeable.
Exactly. I remember the guys telling me, because we talked about some of this, and they really wanted Bruce McKenna. Just the thing about my dad's character, and it's the same thing people now I can say all over the world have said to me, it was his humanity. The fact that he was able to retain his humanity. And Bruce said, when you see the way we portray him on Okinawa, it's not even going to closely resemble what he is like coming on to Pavuvu. And they really did do a good job of portraying that. And it's that development in the character arc.
And he came damn close to losing that humanity, but we'll save that for that episode.
He did. Yes. Story for another day.
So one of the cool things about this scene is they show you the inside of the LSTs. And show you getting them on the craft. And I love the fact that they look up at the window and you see the naval officer with that weird looking helmet on.
Talker helmet. I also want to point out, I love the way that scene of them in the tank deck is great. I love the way when those Amtraks and those amphibious tractors start those radial engines, you really hear, there's nothing in the world that sounds like a radial engine, and you hear that to great effect in this scene, and I love that.
And get off that beach. And when you get to the tree line, remember to clear your weapons of sand. Mortimer.
No, this is another scene like I was discussing earlier. This is the first time we were introduced to the helmet cover.
Yeah.
The change in the uniform.
Don, also want to point out, Bruce, I know Matt Leach and I have had this conversation. And Matt, being a European guy, Band of Brothers guy, was struck by those bay doors opening on the LST. and the ramp going down and the white light coming in. And Bruce and I actually had this conversation. That is Sledgehammer 2.0 being born. That's where he goes from the doughy-eyed, completely naive. That white light comes in, they start forward. That is the beginning of Sledgehammer 2.0.